In this short little video, I'm just going to give sort of an overview of some of the research skills you have. Obviously, I can't do everything in such a short video, but you're obviously going to need to know the difference between primary and secondary sources, which you may already know. But a primary source is something from the event itself, or it's in a first-hand account. It'd be things like diaries or letters or memoirs or autobiographies, oral histories, speeches, newspapers from the time, or government documents, photographs, or audio recordings. Objects or artifacts from the event itself are primary sources. Now, secondary sources are the written by people who weren't there. They're written later, and they're often historians who use the primary sources to draw conclusions. But secondary sources are not there, but they are interpretive. Now, it's not always easy to tell the difference between primary and secondary sources. Let's say you got a book published in the 1930s, and it's about the Indian Wars of the late 19th century. If the book is by an old man in the 1930s who was actually there and he's recounting his stories, well, it would be a primary source even though it was published half a century later. If, on the other hand, let's say you have a Kansas housewife in the Civil War talking about a battle in Virginia in the Civil War, even though it comes from the time she wasn't at that battle, and if she's talking about the battle, she's not a primary source. On the other hand, if she was talking about what it's like to be a housewife in Kansas during the Civil War, then indeed she would be a primary source. Let's say you got a compilation of speeches. If those speeches are unabridged, they're unedited, they can be considered a primary source. If they've been changed or altered in any way, however, they would be a secondary source. So again, it's not always easy. The first step in your research is to grasp what's already been written about your subject. And this requires you to locate and acquire the relevant secondary sources, the articles and books about your subject. This is your first step. Southeastern's library webpage is an excellent place to go. On the left of the main page to the library, you can click on electronic resources. And this brings up a number of databases with lists of articles and books. You can look specifically at some of the databases like America, History and Life, or First Search, or JSTOR, or WorldCat, among others. They all are databases of sources that might be valuable to you. Please note that these databases often require a username and password, but as a Southeastern student, you can have that access. Instructions are often given on the website, but if you have a problem, just see a reference librarian and they can help you out. You can also get a list of published works from the Library of Congress webpage. The Library of Congress has the records of every item published, and while most are not available full text online, you can still locate the source's bibliographic data. Now, any book or article that you can't find directly at Southeastern's library or full text in one of the databases Southeastern purchases, you can get the book or the article from interlibrary loan. You can do this also from Southeastern Library's webpage. There's a link to interlibrary loan on the right. You just fill out the form and order the book or article you've discovered. Please note that it takes several weeks for the ordered material to arrive. Indeed, once it's arrived, you only have it for a limited period before you must return it. So like all your research, you don't want to procrastinate. You want to get started right at the outset. Now, once you've located and read the key secondary sources, you have a much better idea of your subject. Not only the actual events as they took place, but also, what the historians have written about them. But the conclusions of others. And this information is absolutely important because you're getting ready to turn to your primary sources, and this knowledge will give you a better idea of what to look for in the primary sources. And when you find something, you have a better idea of interpreting it, understanding what it is. Now, the internet is an outstanding source for primary sources. It gets better every year. Most archives have great websites with material available online. There are a number of academic institutions and historical societies and other groups that have websites with online primary material. Governments at all levels, local, state, and national, have websites with primary material. Newspapers have archives. I could go on and on. One place to begin, however, is, again, Southeastern's library. On the library webpage, you click on electronic resources, and you can have, for example, access EBSCO, which can quickly tell you if Southeastern itself has either a hard copy or a microfilm copy, or has access to an online full text to any number of journal, magazine, newspapers, and newsletters. Southeastern's library, you probably already know, is an official depository of government documents. And it's easy to locate such things as presidential papers, statutes and laws, treaties, the records of various armies and wars, and of course the congressional record. This list is hardly exclusive, and students are really advised to familiarize themselves with what's available because it's right next door. Once again, you don't have to search alone. The librarians will assist you. There are just too many excellent websites to note in this brief video, but I just listed a couple of things here. I've already mentioned the Library of Congress, but the National Archives and Records Administration is absolutely key. If you had more time, you can order things online and get them sent to you, copies of them. But in the one-term class, this probably isn't a possibility. But they do have some things that are scanned and downloaded, and they have all sorts of records. For example, the census. Now, the U.S. Census is boycotted for 72 years after it's published because they don't want to embarrass people. But that means that the latest census available is 1940. But you can get all the census material prior to that off the NARA website. The state of Oklahoma has archives. The local county has archives. The Native American Nation have archives, the Chickasaw and Choctaw Nations. I really like the American Presidency Project, which is done by the University of California, Santa Barbara. It's easy, and you get in there and you can pull up any presidential speech or any presidential press conference, any presidential published paper or comments or anything from any president very easily. I should also note that the New York Times is often called the newspaper of record. And it's an excellent newspaper for placing events into chronological order and kind of understanding what actually took place day by day. The newspaper has an online archives, but its online index just frankly isn't the greatest. Southeastern's library, however, has the paper in bound hard copy and on microfilm, but it also has an excellent index that can be used both at the library and online. Spare me Wikipedia and encyclopedias, okay? They're okay for familiarizing yourself with a subject when you don't know anything about it, but they are not good sources. Of course, anybody can edit Wikipedia. Taking an oral history is an excellent primary source. If you take an oral history, you do this last in your research because that way you'll know exactly what to ask. But you have to arrive prepared. If you're going to record it, you've got to let the subject know that they're going to be recorded and what they're going to do. Now, your grade's going to depend not just on the number of sources, because that's relative to how easy you can find them, and that's dependent upon your subject. So, it's not just the number of your sources, but also the diversity. Are you able to locate different types of sources, both primary and secondary? Because that shows me research skills. Did you locate the obvious ones, the major articles in the books on your subject? Did you get the most obvious primary sources? Or perhaps on the other extreme, you located a source that was very remote and hard to get. And that really suggests some real effort and ability. So it's not an easy thing to say we have to have X number of sources, because you really can't say that. It's a reflection of your research skills. In any event, I want to conclude this little section by saying it should be clear that simply relying on the internet alone will not suffice for adequate research. Hear me again, you're going to need to have diversity, not just the internet. Be forewarned. This concludes this short little video on research.